You've probably been learning English vocabulary ineffectively through memorization, reading articles, books, watching videos, or more or less passively if you wonder how to have better memory for learning English. Most probably no one taught you how memory works, how to remember vocabulary so you could use them freely when you have conversations. Your teachers threw at you a bunch of words at school for you to memorize for a test. And then you probably did that for many, many years, practice that skill. So no wonder you keep using the same old school, ineffective way to learn vocabulary as an adult. I got fluent and confident in speaking English by the age of 20 because I focused on regularly reviewing vocabulary. And in today's video, I'm going to explain to you why always looking for new words and passively just consuming more content in English isn't really helping you if you want to reach high levels of fluency in English. Hey English learner, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Chubby. I'm an English fluency learning and language anxiety coach, and this is a channel for serious English learners like you who want to make more vocabulary memorable through listening and spoken interaction and want to speak English more comfortably, freely and confidently. And if these are topics you're interested in, you're more than welcome to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get my weekly updates, long and short form videos, and everything else you can imagine that will help you speak English more fluently and confidently. It's important to remember that your memory didn't develop to help you learn a second language. It has its evolutionary role. And that's most probably the reason why you don't know how to have better memory for learning English. Our memory helps us protect ourselves. When we see something repeatedly, we either look at it as something safe or important for us to remember in the future. For example, when humans stumbled upon a tiger in the jungle, they needed to remember where the tiger lived so they don't go back and risk their lives again. And that's what we tap into with my students inside my program, the Proficiency Fortress, when we focus on regularly reviewing vocabulary, so as they consistently build up their vocabulary foundations, they get more confident in using them rather than always learning new words that they have no idea how to use. When you always look to learn new words, you probably do that because this is what you see on social media, where teachers want to grab your attention by showing you some interesting or shocking vocabulary you've never seen before, when in fact it's more about having a lack of confidence in using vocabulary. And that could come from not learning vocabulary effectively at the moment of learning in the first place. Too many struggling English students get way too impatient when they are learning English. Remember, it took you about 5 to 10 years at least to get to a fluent level in your first language, and you still weren't able to use technical words. So why would you be so hard on ourselves when we are learning our second language? So being consistent in reading, listening to, or watching something in English, and then reviewing what you've learned, and then using what you've learned on a regular basis, and then making sure you're patient with yourself in the process is going to be really important. Look at learning vocabulary effectively like taking care of a garden. You wouldn't expect to bite into an apple the day after you planted an apple seed, would you? First, we need to make sure the seeds are planted in fertile soil full of nutrients and minerals, just like we need to create the right conditions for us to learn vocabulary effectively. And in this video, I share with you some of my best tips on how I learned vocabulary really effectively so I don't make mistakes, I don't hesitate, and words just come out of my mouth automatically at the end of that process. But what will definitely help you remember vocabulary when you need it in conversations is if you pay close attention to the language you're consuming. It's challenging to do this in this modern world where notifications, billboards, our friends, other people's problems, sometimes our own worries keep fighting for our attention. But I always tell my students, even a 10-minute focus activity, doing something with your English, is going to help you improve your fluency so much faster than hours spent mindlessly scrolling on social media because you simply don't know what to do. We always remember better if we look at vocabulary in the environment it is used, so we can remember how to use it when we need it in the future. And this is why what helps my students remember vocabulary and also use a wide range of active vocabulary as they speak English is spending most of their time reading, listening to or watching something in English, and then being a bit analytical and learning some of the expressions and phrases that are in their natural context. So they learn how to use that vocabulary when they need it, when they need to speak or write in English. Because many times the reason you might hesitate, look for the perfect word to use, or make mistakes as you speak English is because you didn't learn how to use that vocabulary. Making vocabulary important, relevant to you or to your future conversations is going to help you have better memory for learning English. So right now I'm focusing on my Japanese as I'm preparing to go back to my third country in the summer, and I need vocabulary to communicate with my friends, or if they speak English, then they're friends as well. So whenever I come across new expressions as I'm reading, as I'm watching an anime or a movie, I always ask myself these three questions. Do I actively use this expression when I speak, or do I just understand it? Because what I see many times is that struggling English students just simply gloss over a bunch of useful, really useful and commonly used vocabulary that they don't use when they speak, simply because they understand in the text and they just move on. They don't realize what they actually have to pay attention to is not to understand vocabulary, but to activate vocabulary that they don't normally use. So make sure you don't just read or listen to English thinking, yeah, I understand most of this. Because if you want to remember more vocabulary and then use a wide range of vocabulary in your future conversations, understanding a bunch of vocabulary simply isn't going to be enough. But here's how I would work on activating more of it. Ask yourself the second question: is this expression going to be useful for me in the future? If the answer is yes, how can I make this memorable for me right now so when I need it in the future, I can easily recall it? Making associations at the moment of learning, creating these reminders that you can easily remember in a future conversation is the single most important thing you can do to remember vocabulary and then stop wondering how to have better memory for learning English. Let's say you're learning the word blockbuster, which is a word we use for a really successful movie. How would I make this word memorable? I would simply create strong imagery in my head. Bust actually has really strong connotations. So I would imagine something like a movie literally breaking through a canvas of a cinema and making a huge impact on the audience. A seed then will grow into a healthy plant and then a healthy tree if we take care of it. We need to make sure it gets water, lots of nutrients, we take out the weed. Just like we need to forget about vocabulary that we don't actually need or isn't very common. Prioritizing the vocabulary that's really commonly used or that's important for you is going to help you feel less overwhelmed and make faster progress with your English, which I talk a lot about if you check out this video. Taking care of your garden, looking at what other things are there to make sure the plants are growing fast, is the equivalent to revisiting your vocabulary on a regular basis. My students inside my program go through a well-planned vocabulary learning plan where we always spend time reviewing vocabulary we covered earlier, mostly in a communicative way. This is where I would definitely recommend using questions. Questions are very powerful for you to create all those memories and then keep reviewing vocabulary in a more communicative way. And if you're interested in what sort of questions we ask each other in class inside the Proficiency Fortress, you can download a cheat sheet right in the description below. Let's see the expression let off steam, which is an expression to say relax or unwind from daily stress. So these are just 5 questions I would either ask my students directly or teach them how to ask each other that will help them create better, stronger connections in their mind with this vocabulary. And you could do this with me. Just pause the video whenever you need time to think about the answer to the questions. When was the last time you let off steam? Would looking at social media posts be considered letting off steam? How often do you let off steam? And then you can move into some more in-depth questions as well. Why do you think so many people don't let off steam too often? Or is it better to let off steam by going to the gym or by watching trash TV? You get the idea. These are just some of the questions that are included in my free 30-day learning plan. If you're looking for more effective ways to learn vocabulary so you could remember them more effectively as well, so that you don't always look for the perfect words to use, you know what expressions to use to express yourself, click the first link in the description below to get access to it so you can start improving your speaking, also work on your listening skills and expand your vocabulary in ways you've probably never seen before. There's actually an even more important component if you still wonder how to have better memory for learning English. And I decided to dedicate an entire video to why this is so important to do and why so many struggling English students avoid doing this on a regular basis. It's basically going to be about how having regular conversations with other people, how interaction is actually a huge part of helping you remember vocabulary better, because it simply teaches you how to use sentences, phrases, expressions in that situation. But more on that in part 2.